Water is peaceful, clean, and is the Earth's lifeline. It's a wonderful sight, but is it really as clean as it looks? Most of us don't think about water because it's everywhere. It's what we drink and use in millions of different ways, from manufacturing to recreation. This program would discuss wet weather discharges or stormwater runoff. We'll discuss a range of information, all related to what each person and organization can do to help reduce the harmful effects of stormwater runoff. Runoff is a major concern to our global environment, people, animals, and ecosystems.
You've all seen contaminated water. It looks bad and it's harmful to everyone and everything. Pollution in our stormwater runoff is now a major cause of pollution of creeks, streams, rivers, marshlands, midlands, even bayous and the seas themselves. Stormwater discharges are generated by runoff from land and impervious areas such as paved streets, parking lots, and building rooftops during rainfall and snow events that often contain pollutants in quantities that could adversely affect water quality. Most stormwater discharges are considered point sources and require coverage by an NPDES permit. The permit method to control stormwater discharges is through the use of best management practices. Activities that take place at industrial facilities, such as material handling and storage, are often exposed to stormwater. The runoff from these activities discharges industrial pollutants into nearby storm sewer systems and water bodies, which can adversely impact water quality. To limit pollutants in stormwater discharges from industrial facilities, the NPDES Phase 1 Stormwater Program includes an industrial stormwater permitting component. Operators of industrial facilities, included in one of the 11 categories of stormwater discharges associated with industrial activity that discharge stormwater to a municipal separate storm sewer system, or directly to waters of the United States, require authorization under an NPDES industrial stormwater permit. The NPDES, or National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, is operated by the EPA.
The interesting thing about laws administered by EPA that isn't true of OSHA laws is that EPA laws can be the subject of what's called a citizen suit. Somebody comes along and says, hey, why are they dumping all that stuff in the river? Why are they throwing all that stuff in those barrels and burying them somewhere? And that person doesn't have to be an employee, doesn't have to be related to the employer's work in any regard, doesn't have to be in a contractual relationship, just can be anybody. OSHA doesn't have that right for workers who are injured or for people who watch workers being injured, witnesses to some accident or something. But EPA has that, and that's a very powerful tool. So the only thing I would say is that an employer that has any contact with the general public should have a very good EPA compliance plan, make sure they're obeying the environmental laws, that when they can't, they've done their due diligence, their good faith efforts, their negotiations with the agency, their efforts to show that they've done what they can, because otherwise they're really fair game for anybody who comes along.
If an industrial facility has a standard industrial classification SIC code or meets the narrative description listed in the 11 categories, the facility operator must determine if the facility is eligible for coverage under a general or an individual NPDES industrial stormwater permit. The types of industrial activities are listed in categories. Category 1, facilities with effluent limitations. Category 2, manufacturing. Category 3, mineral, metal, oil and gas. Category 4, hazardous waste, treatment, or disposal facilities. Category 5, landfills. Category 6, recycling facilities. Category 7, Steam electric plants. Category 8. Transportation facilities. Category 9. Treatment works. Category 10. Construction activity. And Category 11. Light industrial activity. Wet weather discharges refers collectively to point source discharges that result from precipitation events, such as rainfall and snowmelt. Wet weather discharges include stormwater runoff, combined sewer overflows, and wet weather sanitary sewer overflows. Stormwater runoff accumulates pollutants such as oil and grease, chemicals, nutrients, metals, and bacteria as it travels across land. Storm runoff and wet weather sanitary sewer overflows contain a mixture of raw sewage, industrial wastewater, and stormwater, and have resulted in beach closings, shellfish bed closings, and aesthetic problems. We are not discussing major oil spills, which have made TV and news media events, but are illustrating a chronic, day after day, mini-polluting of our environment, ecology, economy, and life itself. People in general pay very little attention to the problem of stormwater runoff, and when they do, most of the times it's only because of mandatory laws and regulations. We have all seen the long hole cut in the side of the curb with the bar across it, or the grate at the curb in the street, or at the center divider of a freeway. These are examples of storm drains. Their purpose is to provide an escape channel for rainwater or snowmelt, so water does not flow to any depth on our roadways, which increases the hazards to vehicle drivers in rain or snow conditions. But is it just the rain that goes down these drains? Is the rainwater itself always clean? The answer to both these questions is, of course, not. In many large cities, the rain falls through layers of smog, which can be a collection of hazardous materials and chemical compounds. Rain brings some of these pollutants back to Earth. Often it's called acid rain, which is a compound of hazardous material wastes originating from airborne pollution of a variety of industrial effluents. Let's divide this type of stormwater runoff into 4 distinct categories. 1. Residential. 2. Commercial. 3. Industrial. And 4. Accidental spills from rail cars, tanker trucks, and transportation. Residential pollution or stormwater runoff is perhaps the most insidious, with much of the pollution coming from untrained or uninformed residents. Some may understand the problem at work, but forget their knowledge at home. It's like wearing personal protective equipment at work all day, then ignoring safety at home. Some residential problems occur through oil changes in the driveway, and intentionally dumping the dirty oil down the storm drain. Pollution occurs when lawn care persons use an overabundance of herbicides, pesticides, or don't properly soak the proper amount of these items into the ground, leaving them above ground for the next rain to wash them away to the nearest storm drain. How about car washing, using industrial strength soaps, detergents, chrome dressing, tire dressing, rubbing compound, and waxes that get washed down the storm drains along with spilled oil, paint thinners, gasoline, and hazardous chemical pollutants? Make your own list because there are so many hazardous items that are flushed down the storm drains. A number of positive steps have been taken in recent years to curb the effects of residential pollution of stormwater runoff. One of the easiest prevention measures is the Storm Drain Stenciling Project, where municipalities stencil warnings not to dump anything down the storm drains. Municipalities are also stepping up debris removal from storm drain entrances. Commercial pollution of stormwater runoff is the result of many different components. The constant repair and updating of buildings lead to a myriad of exposure from paint overspray to spills of paint thinners, caulking compounds, and similar operations. Automobile repair and detail shops present a multiple of exposures in the cosmetic cleansing process. using power washers with a hazardous group of chemicals are all injurious to the environment and the ecosystem in one method or another. Commercially owned vehicles such as carpools, fleet delivery trucks, school buses add to the pollution. Gas stations and car washes, sand gravel delivery, and many others take their toll on commercial pollution. You can imagine pollution from leaks in vehicle fluid systems to overfilling your gas tank, from illegal dumping by detail shops, hosing down repair areas in auto repair facilities, to the rubber wear from tires left on the street, highways, and freeways. These are only a very, very few examples. One very extreme example of blatant but condoned pollution is the commercial de-icing of road surfaces with rock salt. Salt is injurious to the environment and nature in a variety of ways. Industrial pollution leading to stormwater runoff is still blatantly rampant despite the strict laws and severe fines levied against the few that are caught and convicted. One industry that is often overlooked is the medical industry, going all the way back up the chain to the illegal disposal of test animals, as well as body parts, tissue samples, tumors, and other waste. We have found needles and other sharps illegally dumped into the storm drain or deposited at the far end of the system in the marshlands and offshore. The cosmetic industry closely follows the medical industry, where some disposed of test animal cadavers illegally into the storm drain runoff system. Mortuaries are unscrupulous for polluting the system in many ways, some too gross to discuss, but we see the results and capture, conviction, and sentencing of the perpetrators, as well as the grief brought down upon families all too often on the news. Again, there have been inroads. Companies are taking responsibility. They are educating employees, replacing, adding equipment and vehicles with new units, while keeping older units in a better state of repair and, thusly, reaping the benefits. The primary method to control stormwater discharges is through the use of best management practices. In 1991, the EPA issued stringent regulations that required most industrial facilities to take appropriate measures to ensure that stormwater and snowmelt that runs off their sites are not polluted from contamination by industrial materials that otherwise would wind up in the nation's streams, rivers, and lakes. There are two types of best management practices, or BMPs. These two types are structural and operational. Structural BMPs are permanent structures or devices installed at a facility to protect stormwater runoff. Structural BMPs include secondary containment structures or berms around bulk tanks capable of holding 110% of the volume of each tank. Outbuildings are sheds to cover material storage, and skirts mounted on loading docks to seal out stormwater during truck loading/unloading operations are all structural BMPs. Operational, also called non-structural BMPs, are work practices that are used on a daily basis to protect stormwater runoff from pollution. These BMPs may include educational materials, school stormwater programs, public meetings and citizen groups, volunteer cleanups, monitoring programs, and adopt a storm drain programs, illicit discharge detection programs, regulatory ordinances and other regulatory mechanisms, including prohibitions on non-storm discharges into separate storm sewers, requirements for control of erosion, sediment, and other pollutants on construction sites, site plan approval processes requiring post-construction stormwater controls, requirements for installation of controls at existing sites that are likely sources of pollutant runoff, BMP operation and maintenance requirements with regulatory enforcement provisions, procedures for inspecting and monitoring structural BMPs, street sweeping, catch basin cleaning, and organic yard waste controls. Training materials and municipal maintenance activities and schedules. Recycling and pollution prevention programs. The days when stormwater management meant only moving the water are over. Yet by carefully planning in advance, municipalities and others affected by the NPDES Phase 2 stormwater regulations, such as construction site operators, will be able to promote the long-term quality of local water resources and substantially reduce the cost of implementation and compliance.
The goal is clean water, better managed water, and of course, the well-being of humans, animals, the environment, and the world's ecosystem. It requires the interest and help from everyone. It's no longer a good idea, it's an absolute necessity. Thank you.